The New York Federal Reserve claims 90% of the tariff burden is being shouldered by U.S. firms and consumers, but the White House disagrees. Joining us now, White House National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett. This will be, Kevin, good to see you. This will be a continuation of a discussion we had yesterday with Ambassador, with our trade representative, Jameson Greer, and we talked about whether something's regressive, but we'll try to get into all of this. We saw an inflation number last week, 2.4%. If it is being shouldered by U.S. firms and consumers, U.S. firms are eating some of it, or consumers it's being offset by something else, whether it's lower gas prices or something else, because just in the numbers themselves, that doesn't hold water. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, I mean, the paper is an embarrassment. It's, I think, the worst paper I've ever seen in the history of the Federal Reserve System. The people associated with this paper should presumably be disciplined, because what they've done is they've put out a conclusion which has created a lot of news that's highly partisan, based on analysis that wouldn't be accepted in a first semester econ class. The bottom line is that if you're wondering, like, who bears the burden of something, of a tariff, then you remember, Joe, you got supply curves, demand curves, you shift them around, you got consumer surplus, you got producer surplus, and then you look and see how it all works out in the end. And they're basically only looking at changes in prices. So they're assuming that quantities don't move at all. But guess what? Quantities did move at all. So the basic theory of President Trump's tariffs is that we're importing stuff from China, but we got producers in the U.S. that make the same stuff, maybe at a slightly higher price. If we bring the stuff home, create the demand at home, then that will hurt China and drive up wages in the U.S., and American consumers will be better off. So what have we seen? Prices have gone down. Inflation is down over time. Import prices dropped a lot in the first half of the year and then leveled off, and real wages were up $1,400 on average last year, which means that consumers were made better off by the tariffs. And so consumers couldn't have been made better off by the tariffs if this New York Fed analysis was correct. It's really just an embarrassment. But I can't imagine who signed off on it, frankly.
But in the best case scenario, it's something in the middle, that maybe there are some exporters that have to cut prices, and therefore it lessens the impact of some of the tariffs. But there are certainly importers in this country that are paying some of the tariffs. And I'm not saying my discussion yesterday was normally Democrats would be fine with corporations in this country somehow providing revenues to the U.S. government to be used to reduce the deficit, which is what is happening with some of these tariff revenues. But then we get to the sticky point about whether, when it hits consumers, whether it's regressive. And that's where Jameson Greer made the point that a lot of consumption is skewed to the high end. It's not necessarily going to affect low end. But it does affect low end people, Kevin, because it's less services, it's things like food and other things that they have to have. And as a percentage of their income, it is probably... it hurts them more than some of the high-end consumers. Is it not regressive, the tariffs? Because they'll concede to you that taxes, let's raise taxes through tariffs, if that's what it is, but don't make it regressive.
What we've been doing is by congressional district, we've been looking at how much more money people have to spend because they're buying the normal bundle of goods that they need to survive, and how much money people have gained in the last year because incomes have gone up because of all of our great policies which are causing a business boom. And almost without exception, when you go look at it, incomes are up way more than the cost of living. And that's the real wage gain that this silly Fed study neglects to mention. And so the bottom line is that Trump policies are meant to onshore production and create jobs. And those jobs that we're creating are not for, Jeff Bezos. They're for the people who didn't have a job before. And so they're by definition the people at the bottom. And our policies are working. They're very clearly working in the data.
I guess at the very least, would you concede that there are global imbalances being addressed by the tariffs? That's one of the rationales for why the president put them in. But there are some negative ramifications for what happens in the United States. I mean, at least you'd concede that.
Well, there will be anecdotes. For example, there'll be a company that
Some
has
price
a
pressure
part that comes from
Kevin,
China.
Some price pressure. There was an article yesterday. Not all the articles are wrong that criticize what's happening with tariffs. I mean, some of these companies do plan to raise prices in response to some of the tariffs, which makes inflation harder to get down to 2%.
Right. But it's interesting, right, that everybody said that with these large tariffs that we'd have runaway inflation and stagflation. And as you rightly point out, we've had very strong economic growth and inflation going closer and closer to the target. And now it is true that we're seeing news stories that people say, well, we've held off on raising prices because of the tariffs, but we're going to have to now. I guess the question is everybody going to do that? Or are some people going to do that? And the people who do that, are they going to lose customers to the folks who don't? That's what happened last year. I expect that's what's going to happen this year, too.
Right. Hey, Kevin, when you do your own modeling of just how the economy will look over the next 12 months, how do you model whatever you think the AI implications are into all of this?
Sure. So, what I like to do is I like to start out with a guesstimate of aggregate supply and then a guesstimate of aggregate demand and then see how they go. And so on aggregate supply side, I think we're growing at about 3% productivity. I think we're maybe getting 1.5% out of capital stock growth, the new factories, and maybe 0.5% or so out of workers and workers being more productive. And so that gets you aggregate supply to sort of 5, which is a really, really strong aggregate supply number. I think aggregate demand is probably running, given what government's doing, maybe around 7. And so I think that we are probably looking at a 2% inflation, a 5% growth, something like that. But we'll wait and see. It's really early in the year. But generally speaking, the productivity gains that we've seen have been very consistent. They've been in the 3s, and we have productivity growing in the 3s. It's really hard not to have GDP growth that's north of 4.
This will continue, I guess, Kevin, because for as well as many things are going on in the economy in terms of new highs in the stock market and possible increases in GDP, unemployment, we're close to probably full employment, and
Sure.
Inflation is 2.4. But I can't help thinking that some of the feelings of frustration with people with this economy has something to do with affordability, and it makes me wonder whether tariffs are hurting the low-end consumer.
I honestly, Joe, I was just going to say that I honestly think that what we're seeing in the data, the latest surveys that we're seeing, the Michigan survey and so on, is
it's not regressive. You'll stake your life on it as a.
No, I usually don't like that survey. But what I'm saying is that the normal pattern, right, is that it takes a while for wages to adjust. Wages are sticky. In fact, sticky wages are a key part of every Keynesian macroeconomic model. And what that means is that people don't get their salary adjustment till January or February, or sometimes don't really understand the full after-tax implications until they file their taxes in April or hopefully early this year. And so one of the things that we're seeing is that real incomes are up, way up, after being down 4 years in a row under Joe Biden. They're up about $1,400 per year for the average family. And then when people look at their wallets, they think, oh, wow, these policies are working better than I thought. And then when they get their big tax refund, because no tax on overtime and so on, I think that they'll see that their wallets are doing great at the same time that prices are stabilizing and going back to 2%-ish. And so, yeah, I think that the economic story is very, very positive. And that if you're worried about why is it catching up, it catches up because salary adjustments tend to happen in January, which is, right about now, people are seeing it, and we're seeing that in the survey data.
I guess we got to go. I know there was a meeting yesterday to talk about messaging and things like that. I think we just saw maybe some of the conclusions that came out of the meeting as put forth.
Yeah, I wasn't in that meeting.
You got ears everywhere. I know you got ears and eyes everywhere, Hassett. All right. Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Thanks.